So SiegeGG yesterday released player pages, which is a feature I know a lot of people have been waiting for probably since like the birth of this website, but as of yesterday, it's now a thing. Every player from every competition that SiegeGG has ever tracked now has an individual player profile that's got their stats, their socials, their event honors, their recent matches, what team they're on, any news related to them, and so on. And there's also a little drop down on this page here that sorts through their statistics. It's set to lifetime by default, but you can sort it through the past 3 months or the past 6 months, just specifically for that player. This is a really cool feature. It gives players the highlights that I think they deserve and just an easy way to find stats about them, but that's not all that they've introduced with this update. It goes far beyond just the individual pages because all of it links back to one massive player profile. And this is where the real fun begins. If SiegeGG did statistics for an event, you'll find every player and those stats on this page depending on how you filter through it. So everything done in Tier 1 and Tier 2, essentially since the game started having a competitive scene. There are some leagues that aren't included in here, like I know one big one is the UK Ireland Nationals, isn't something SiegeGG does stats for, but still, you're capable of sorting through this by lifetime. If you look at this, you've got an option to sort through the past 6 years, and when it finally loads, you'll be able to look at every single individual statistic that players have accumulated since they've been playing the game as far back as 6 years ago. You can sort through all of the typical categories, so the SiegeGG rating system, which I know some people don't really like the SiegeGG method of getting this rating. There are equations for it, but I think at this point it's just kind of being accepted as the standard. Sort by their KD, how good their entry is, how many maps they've played total, what their overall cost is, their survivability, 1vx, headshot percentage, all of the normal stats that SiegeGG tracks are here. And you've got a couple options for how selective you want to be if you're looking for something specific. So obviously the date range here matters a lot. You can sort by regions, so EU, NA, APAC, and LATAM. There's also this international one here too, which I believe just means anytime a team from one region plays a team outside of their region. You can also sort it by tier, but this specifically relates to a player's time spent in a Tier 1, Tier 2, or Tier 3 league, and so on. Like one example I can think of is Kool-Aid. He currently plays for Parabellum in a Tier 1 league. He spent the majority of last year playing in CL, which is a Tier 2 league, but he also played in CCS. So if you want to go specifically find how he was doing when he played in Tier 3, then I'll open this up. We'll sort it by Tier 3, and if you scroll down, if you sort by name, then you'll find Kool-Aid back when he played on Aerial Arise for all 11 maps that he played in CCS Season 5 for North America. You can sort by the environment, whether it was an online tournament or a LAN tournament, which I know a lot of people will want to focus on this one, and then you have a minimum map counter. So if you want to filter out some of the people that maybe you've only played a couple of maps in relevant competition for what you're looking for, then you can set this to essentially whatever you want. Now, I will admit, I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of math or raw analytics, so to speak. Like, I left a STEM high school to go to a film college because numbers specifically gave me a headache, but I could pore over a stat sheet like this for hours because there's so much in here that you can just break down into really interesting facts. You want to know who the best player of all time is, who has the most kills, highest cost lifetime, the most 1vx's, the most plants overall. You can find all of those stats on a page like this, and if you do that, then it starts to tell a lot of really interesting stories, and you can bet your ass I'm going to be using this on broadcast because of all of the different things you can find. So yes, the clickbait title to this video, who is the greatest player of all time? Well, if you do that based off SiegeGG's rating formula and unlock it so it's over the entirety of the past 6 years, the answer is Defiance from Project Neo, who played one map, went 10-6, with a 1.51 rating. Defiance is the greatest player who's ever played Siege. Then you can start to turn some of these filters on and it begins to tell a different story. So if we set 100 maps and specifically said Tier 1 players, so people who have played in Tier 1 leagues, by rating, it puts Yas above Palu, which I kind of think is interesting, but that's only by a 0.01 difference in rating, and there aren't even that many people who, under these parameters, get above a 1.2. Technically, there's only 4 players. You can sift through it by KD, and this is what I know a lot of people consider to be the best player award, so to speak, and that's where we see, yeah, Palu and Nesk literally This one's really interesting. Even though Nesk, I think, has the most kills of any player who's ever played Pro Siege at 3,700, Paulu's over here at 32. There's a 500 kill difference between the two of them, and yet there's an 800 kill differential difference between the two. By these stats, Paulu is also only 25 kills without deaths away from having 1,000 more kills than he has deaths over the course of his entire career, which is just nutty. And you can also start to find players to put into like really high tier prestigious clubs. Like if you look at the 3,000 kill club, there's like 4 players who meet that requirement. It's Paulu, it's Nesk. If you keep looking down, it's Psycho, it's Renshiro, and then no one else even comes close. Alems might hit 3,000 kills at some point, but the further down you scroll, there's just no one else who touches the 4 of them in terms of overall kill count. If we keep sifting through it by rating, then you kind of get an idea for what the average overall lifetime rating is for players that we consider to be really good. So if a 1.2 lifetime is really difficult for these guys to hit, and then you keep on scrolling down, having below a 1.10 seems even more numerous, and you just keep going down and down. And there aren't that many players who, because of the 100 map limit that we set, have below a 1.0, and even in that case, it's still a pretty good rating overall. Consorted by entry, and this is where the two of them actually flip-flop, Paulu has a higher KD differential overall, but Nesk does have him beat specifically in the entry category, both on the differential and number of kills. Though, to be fair, the two of them were just going to be competing for awards for essentially everything. Renshiro's played the most maps of any pro player. Nesk, Julio, Psycho, and Kamikaze are all right there with him. Highest cost award goes to Bride at 72%, and again, looking at this, the number of players who lifetime have a cost of 70% or higher only extends to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 players. KPR one was one I thought was interesting because even pro players at this level aren't capable of having a 1.0 KPR across an entire pro career. Shiko takes this award at a 0.99. He's so close to having on average 1 kill per round. He essentially does have it, but still, look at how many people, again, only really approach the 0.9 category in KPR. Survivability rating is another one I thought was curious, just because this one wasn't going to be very high. It's Rainbow Six Siege. It's a game of if you kill the other team, you win the round, and it's not always going to be based upon whether you can survive until the end or get a diffuser down. It turns into a 3-way tie for Bride and Shepard and Derpa, who I believe is currently a coach for Order's OCE team, so that's pretty elite company to be a part of there. 1vx's is also fun, and this one's just funny because, again, it's Bride, and then I think he also has the most plants. These two are pretty interesting. It just proves that in the battle between Shepard and Bride about who's the best support player, statistically, it is Bride. He can clutch up at a moment's notice. He's got 80 freaking 1. That's nutty. Bosco's right in here in second place, which I think is pretty deserving. The average seems to be around like 45 or so 1vx's, and then there's the outlier that just shoots up to 81 and 77 all the way at the very top of this list. And the most plants one is ridiculous because Bride has more than 100 plants over Shepard, and then Goga is also in here at 215. I really miss our CCA plant guy.
CCA plant.
Rafal, Kamikaze, Sexy Cake in terms of people who have 200 or more plants. Again, that's also a pretty prestigious club. Most disables is kind of a funny one. You wouldn't really think that this one matters a lot, but I went looking at the difference between the 1vx's and the disables and found that Bosco has the second most 1vx's, but also the most disables lifetime, which I wonder if it begs the question of whether he has to clutch a 1vx and then immediately go find the diffuser and counter diffuse it before the round ends. If there happens to be a little bit of a correlation between the two, like, it wouldn't surprise me. And that's the kind of story that you can only really find from statistics like this unless you just happen to know it by heart. I mean, even if we wanted to set this like to just international competition and then not set a minimum maps requirement, according to this, against teams that aren't from the region that they play in, Nesk is the only one who's gotten above 1,000 kills. You can find stuff like this all over the place if you just filter appropriately and then go sifting for the thing that you're looking for. I really love the fact that SiegeGG has gone and added something like this. I think it's great to have a resource available to the public where anyone can go through and sort through statistics, similar to like how HLTV will allow you to do the same. And I know a lot of people will say it's CSGO, it's not quite the same game, but still having those stats available cool. It means that we're just getting more of this information out there so anyone gets an idea of the statistics that are important or the records that exist. This is a little piece of our own history in Rainbow Six that I feel like will give more weight to significant achievements down the road, because we're going to know who's in these really high up there prestigious clubs. I would like to see a little bit more in the filter department for this, like if we could sort it by individual league. So if we wanted to look at like EUL stats aside from stats that players got in like EU Pro League back when that was still a thing, just having an option to sort by which league as opposed to specifically by which tier. But that's rather nitpicky because the stuff that you can do with the page in its current form like this is already pretty numerous. So yeah, I just wanted to highlight this. I think this is really cool. You can find it at siege.gg/players. Link is in the description if you want to go check it out for yourself. And I'm sorry to Grant from DZ who would post tweets like this, because now anyone can post tweets like this. It looks like you're out of a job.